Hey guys, and welcome back to another unit guide for the Lord of the Rings Total War mod for Rome Remastered. This unit guide is based off of patch 1.0. And so just kind of take it with a grain of salt here. Obviously, some of these units may change in the future, but as of right now, this is what we're looking at. And today we're going over for Mordor. And so let's just kind of jump in. You may have guessed it, being Mordor. This first group here is basically trash. In the early parts of the campaign for your armies, you're gonna just have absolute garbage. You're gonna win with numbers, a little bit of tactics here and there, but I'm gonna go through the stats here and you'll see why. So we have the Lesser Orc Spearman here with 2 attack, 11 defense. The Orc Snaga of 2 attack, 3 defense. The Lesser Orc Warband of 3 and 10. The Pit Guards, are a little better. They inspire troops, but still really not the greatest. And I'll just kind of click through the rest here. However, the Orc Spearman and Orc Warband, sorry about that, are kind of like the middle tier here. However, I still felt like they're still pretty bad. The Warband only has 4 attack, 13 melee defense, and then 3 and 15 for the Spearmen. Really, the only thing that these guys have over the other units is the fact that they're a little more heavily armored and they do have a shield. They are still susceptible to missiles, but it's not as bad as the first 5 units here. These 5 units here I do have highlighted. The Slayers, Pit Guards, Lesser Orc Warband, Snaga, and Lesser Orc Spearmen are going to just get absolutely pelted by missile units. So if the enemy has a bunch of missiles and you want to save your other stronger units or monster entities, try and get them to fire at these units. They just won't do anything for you. I honestly wouldn't even count on them holding the line very long. They will get shredded. But, the good thing with that is they basically cost you nothing. As you will be able to tell if you go to my Mordor faction guide. In the army part of that video, I do show the upkeep cost of most of these units, and they're like 50 or 80 gold per turn. So, more or less you get what you pay for, and in this first group here that I determined, they're all basically just crap. But that's okay. It's how Mordor's faction is supposed to be. It's how they play. They're not gonna fight very well. If you see here the highlighting, like the morale, like their base morale is just really bad. So again, just don't expect a lot for these first like, in my opinion, like tier 1 units. Gonna get what you paid for. 2 here, it's just the missile units that you have. You don't have much as Mordor as you would expect. You basically get a javelin unit and a basic orc archer unit. Although, orc archers only having 10 missile attack and their range is really bad, do not underestimate missile units in the game. Missile units are very, very good in the game, no matter what range or damage they do. So I still actually get quite a few orc archers in my armies just because they, it's better to have some missile units than no missile units, in my opinion. Especially because even though the enemy may will probably have better archers than you and whatnot, they'll at least be able to soften up the enemy a little bit for you. So usually I put 3, maybe 4 units in there in my armies just to kind of help with that. But for the most part, they're not going to get you 200 kills like other factions archers will. They're still really squishy to missile fire, cavalry charges, so really just got to be careful with them. Excuse me. But they will essentially earn their value compared to the first tier of melee garbage, just because they have that missile unit or that missile capability. But once they use their ammo, they're basically worthless. Do not under any circumstances throw them in melee. If you're at the point where you have to put the orc archers or the orc scouts here, who are just a javelin variant, into melee, the battle's already lost. they're just going to get wrecked. You're going to take a bunch of casualties. It's just not worth it. It's better to just run at that point and, you know, live to fight another day kind of thing. But yeah, those are your 2 missile units. It's not great, but it's something, and something is better than nothing. Going to their Mordor's, you know, quote unquote high tier infantry. More or less, it's like mid tier for a lot of the other factions. But, I mean, for Mordor, they're not bad. If we look at their stats here, the Spearmen, they do have a bonus fighting cavalry, but they have 4 melee attack, 18 defense. The Orband, 5 and 16. And then the Slayers are like your flanking units with their axes. They're worth their cost, in my opinion. You're able to get these troops pretty early on. And that's the good thing about Mordor is all their troops are fairly inexpensive and really easy to recruit in terms of time it takes to recruit, where you can recruit, you know, your units at. And so as soon as you can get your better troops, get them, upgrade them. There are very few factions in the game where I would recommend, you know, say if you have an army comprised of like the group 1 units here with some missile units and maybe some trolls. You know, I would recommend swapping these units out for these 3 units here. The amounts, there's just a vast difference in terms of quality between this first group and this third group here. In terms of holding the line, damage dealing, it is just night and day basically. Because while, you know, your monster troops, which I will go over here shortly, while all of these troops from the Blackguards here on down are really good for Mordor, you know, if your initial army, you know, you can't just spam them in an army. That's not going to work either. So if your initial army that takes some of the enemy units kind of away from your damage dealers, and you just have a bunch of trolls or whatnot, and they can just focus all their missile fire on the trolls, you're gonna get wrecked. Because trolls now actually can die, thanks to me, so you're welcome. And so, you know, if you don't have better melee infantry, they're just going to get, you know, blown right through or shot up, and then they're gonna move towards your stronger units, and then you're gonna lose anyway. So as soon as you get access to these 3 units here, highly recommend swapping them out. The only reason I would use these units for is just putting them and leaving them in settlements just to maintain public order. Really, they don't have any value other than that later on in the campaign. Later on, your army should consist of these 3, you know, in terms of melee units, these 3 right here, your bread and butter, which really, I mean, if I'm being serious, do the Spearmen, maybe a few orc warband, but a lot of trolls and just charge, you know, cycle charging, a lot of cycle charging. But yeah, not great, but better, you know, it's the best orc melee infantry that Mordor has to offer. So again, kind of like their missile units, it's better than nothing, but still not great. But anyway, moving on. Their cavalry units are kind of 50-50. So their warg units they're not good in my opinion. Really the only thing that they're good for is them running down units for several reasons. One, they're very susceptible to missiles, and because of their hitbox, and so when they're caught in melee after they do their initial charge, which still isn't very good, which I'll explain, they're very susceptible, again, because of their hitbox. And their charge isn't that great because they have, like, the cavalry horde formation. And so, unlike the cavalry here that have a really good charge, not only because of their stats, which a 3 charge in the game is pretty good. I guess they, you know, technically they do have the same charge. But these guys, you know, think of it just like a bunch of, like, rolling rocks, where if you have a bunch of them together, you know, it's going to be really hard to avoid. You're going to get a lot of that collision right from the get-go from that initial charge. But, you know, if you have a enemy, I started the battle, I can't do that. But if you have a enemy unit, you know, standing like right here, and they charge in it, you know, the enemy units can just slide in through here, and then once they get caught in melee, the enemy will just fill in these gaps and then attack all of your units. So really, I mean, if you want to use them, I mean, that's up to you. But I wouldn't recommend it unless you're keeping them out of the fight, which is, again, really hard to do because their unit, their formation here, if I just right-click and drag, I mean, that's as skinny as you can make it. So they're taking up a bunch of space on the map. It's really hard to get them to avoid missile fire, and they just don't do their value. So unless you're going up against an army that's fairly weak and you can run units down, I don't recommend getting them. The Black Guard are usually what the Ring Wraiths have for a bodyguard. I actually haven't recruited them before. I don't know if you can. I think they're just a bodyguard, but I haven't noticed them in any military buildings. But a really, really strong unit. Really good at cycle charging. They're going to last really long in a fight. They do have 2 hit points. They're just a really strong unit. They will get you 200 to 300 kills in a battle easily if you do it right. They are like any larger entity. They do have a larger hitbox, so try and keep them out of prolonged melee, especially against infantry and spearmen. Even with regular infantry, he may only be able to hit 1, maybe 2 units, but they could technically have like 5 or 6 around them, around one unit, which all of them are essentially attacking one of theirs, so it's like 5 to 1. So, but cycle charge, you'll get your value worth. Really good unit, really good at running down enemy archers and whatnot. But yeah, that's your cavalry. Again, not much. One's really kind of crappy, one's really good. Really utilize the Blackguards. Can't emphasize that enough. Going to the not quite the last one here, but Group 5 here, your monster units. These are, not only your fun units, but your damage dealers. You have your basic cave trolls, your mountain trolls, the attack trolls, and then the battle trolls, which basically the only difference is in terms of stats: 13 to 24, 14 and 27, 15 and 31, and then 16 and 41. They are very susceptible to missiles, obviously, because of their large hitbox. So just be aware of that. If the enemy has a bunch of javelins or a bunch of just regular archers, be aware of that. Do not just charge them in. Make sure they're occupied or firing at something else. But these guys are dangerous. They're really good. They really hold their value. They're just really good. Highly recommend getting them. Even the basic cave trolls at the early stages of the campaign are really good to have. The Fell Beast. Now, as much as I know myself and you guys will want to think and hope that this unit is really strong, it is not. I don't know if they fixed it just yet. I haven't played a 1.0 campaign as Mordor just yet. But the Fell Beast here is the Witch King's bodyguard mount. I don't think you can recruit them. They used to be on the ring race, but they changed them to the Blackguards. So I think the Witch King might be the only one that has this now. But it's not that he's a bad unit, because let me rephrase that. It's not that it's not a cool unit or a useful unit, because the unit itself is very fast. So despite its large hitbox, it has a bunch of hit points, as you can see. A lot of melee attack, decent defense, a lot of charge, good amount of armor. It's fast enough to be able to avoid missile units. The problem is the attack animation. It does like a swooping attack animation, and more times than not, it misses. And so I went into a battle, for example, and I was like, oh man, the Witch King's on a Fell Beast. He's just gonna, cause a bunch of issues. And he was swooping back and forth, left and right. It looked like he was constantly attacking. And at the end of the battle, he had like 19 kills. So I don't know, I guess, overall if they've changed that and fixed the animation. But the last I knew, the animation was just off. And so even though it does look cool, it doesn't perform the greatest. So hopefully they'll change that. I think they will down the road, but just for now, just be on the lookout. It is susceptible to missiles. just because of how big its hitbox is. So just kind of be aware of that. And then lastly, the artillery. It's like your basic artillery in the game. It's nothing special. It'll be good for sieges, and that's about it. It's not going to be very accurate. It's not going to get you many kills in the in open field battles. I really don't use them too often. Most of the time, honestly, I'll take the turn or take the 2 turns I need for siege equipment and not bring these with me. Just because, like in older Rome and older Total War titles, siege equipment reduces your campaign movement range, and in this game you really need your campaign movement range, and they just aren't worth they're not worth the cost, they're not worth the 4-turn recruitment time, and they're not worth the reduction in campaign movement range. But if you want them, I mean, there's obviously nothing stopping you, but not worth the bang for the buck, in my opinion. But yeah, that's all of the units. It still ended up being a little longer video than I thought it was going to be. But I guess in summary, you kind of have your crap, your missiles, but still crap, your mediocre units, and then if I just swap these 2 around, like that unit's just blah. But really, your damage dealers are going to be the units I have highlighted here, and kind of the Fell Beast. But this is where your money's going to be with Mordor. If you want to rush them, rush to get trolls, you definitely can. Just pay attention to your economy. It's not worth going broke over, just to get trolls and then lose your campaign. But I hope you guys enjoyed it. Again, leave a like, leave a comment below of the video, and let me know what you guys think. If I miss anything, if you would like to see me spend more time going over the descriptions or the traits and whatnot, feel free to leave that down below, and I'll do my best to address that in future videos. But yeah, leave a like, leave a comment below on what you did like or didn't like, and I will hopefully see you guys again soon. And until then, stay safe, stay healthy, and have a great weekend. See you guys.